Morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Lourdes Blanco, Executive Director, Miami Sports and Exhibition Authority. I am here to speak with regards to item FR1. I was appointed Executive Director on December 14th, 2014, and Executive Director on July 21st, 2015. First issue I encountered, cashier checks presented by Mr. Vega Panichet for rent payments were never deposited in the bank. Kirk Menendez says Aldo Bustamante, Department of Real Estate, is holding the checks. Mr. Kirk Menendez delivered the cashier checks 4 months later. Heliport rent payments were in arrears for 1.5 years. MSEA had no bank accounts to deposit rent payments. I noticed the Watson Island Heliport agreements are an integral part of each other. If one fails, the others fail. The amended interlocal agreement and the joint participation agreement incorrectly joins both tenants into a Watson Island air transportation facility that does not exist. I received a letter from FDOT explaining in detail they will no longer support nor fund the Heliport project, reallocating the grant funds under the JPA. I began to ask questions to Assistant City Attorney George Wisen and City Attorney Victoria Mendez. I don't receive any answers. Financial statements ending in fiscal year 2016 show the heliport is going to be constructed with grant funds from the FDOT, and the funds for both tenants are restrictive. I question the restriction on both accounts. External auditors say MSEA must correct, amend, or discard the Watson Island heliport agreements that I am relying on to be the existing lease agreements that Aldo Bustamante and the city provide me. I request for a meeting with the CFO, Budget Director, and Senior Assistant City Attorney for a legal opinion in reference with the Watson Island Heliport lease agreements. Senior Assistant City Attorney give a legal opinion that agrees with the external auditors. Then Mr. Vega Panichet starts asking me questions I cannot answer because I never prepared any documentation that was sent to the FDOT or to the FAA in relationship with the grants. All documentation was prepared by the Department of Real Estate. From here on, Assistant City Attorney George Wisen and Victoria Mendez do not pay attention to what I'm saying and ignore my many pleadings for the agreements to be corrected, changed, or plainly disregarded. I decide to inform all board members I will not sign financial statements on behalf of MSEA that I consider to be deceiving and improper. Anthony Brunson, external auditor, requests again that I sign a management representation letter covering the MSEA audit for fiscal year ending in 2017. This document says all documents that I presented to Mr. Brunson to conduct the audit are documents without fraudulent misrepresentation, free of material defect, whether intentional or not. Before signing the management representation letter, I sent an email to City Attorney Victoria Mendez requesting confirmation whether the Watson Island heliport agreements are valid and enforceable. Until today, this email remains unanswered. MSEA's financial statements for fiscal year ending in 2017 with significant deficiencies were never discussed and were never approved by the MSEA board. I have retained a forensic accounting firm. I respectfully request that you do the same before you decide to abolish MSEA to avoid catastrophic financial consequences to the city and to the MSEA Board of Directors, for the chief purpose for which the Board of Directors hired me is the same reason for which I am being defamed and retaliated against. Thank you.
What was the last sentence?
Abolishing the Miami Sports and Exhibition Authority by amending Chapter 2, Article 11, Division 2 of the Code of the City of Miami, Florida, as amended, entitled Administration Boards, Committees, Commissions, Standards for Creation and Review of Boards, generally more particularly by amending Sections 2-887, Section B, and 2-892, Section 4, Subsection A, Section 1, to delete MSEA from said boards, amending Chapter 2, Article 11, Division 6 of the City Code entitled Sports and Exhibition Authority, more particularly by repealing Sections 2-1011 through 2-1023 in order to abolish MSEA, and by amending Chapter 18, Article 3 of the City Code titled Finance, City of Miami Procurement Ordinance, more particularly by amending Sections 18-72, Section A, Subsection 2, and 18-74, Subsection C, Subsection 6, Subsection R, to delete MSEA from the provisions of the Miami Procurement Code containing separate clause providing for an effective date.
And I will move the item.
It's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Move.
Second. So seconded by Commissioner Carollo. Any discussion?
Yes. Yes, I have some questions. And I have been always, I'm concerned because I haven't clarified, all the contracts, you see, which contracts are now in place. And I remember when MSEA was made, was formed, and it was not formed to run Watson Island. it was formed to. It was a sport and exhibition authority. It was to promote sports and exhibition. You remember that?
Absolutely.
Okay, you remember that. Now it has gone out of this way. But before we abolish this board, I would like to know that if we are legally free. I want to know what are the contracts, that are in place now between MSEA, the city, the airport, and heliport. You see, I do understand there is some sort of litigation going on between them, and I want to have everything clear that we don't subject ourselves to future litigation or any lawsuit that the city, every time that somebody has the slightest, I will say, the opportunity to sue us, they go ahead and they sue us. That's why I want to know if the contracts that we have and that are those that the city clerk has, they are the same contracts. I want you to confirm that the same contracts that we have been told are the one contracts that they are being with the city clerk office. They have been given to them and have been they are in the records. Because I'm not willing to vote for this unless I get this very clear. Very clear. The reason why we're doing it, the finances, what we're doing it, what's going to happen with all the liabilities that MSEA was paying, the funds that they were receiving, where are they going? You see, and what's going on there? Because I hear from different people that some people somebody has the license to be an airport. And then we don't have the license, and the other person thinks that that's their license. I mean, what's going on? What is going on? I want this clarified, and I'd be willing to move to defer this until all the papers are clear. Because on a clear conscience, I cannot vote for this right now. Because I don't think that anybody has anything. I don't understand this, what's going on real well. You see, I want to know the finances, what's going on. Okay?
Excuse me, Commissioners, we had asked a special concession from the chair. I wanted to
No, we're not open to the public yet. We're discussing among ourselves. Okay?
Okay.
When we're open to the public, the chairperson will allow you to speak, and you'll get an opportunity to speak. I think the mayor's here. I'd like to recognize the mayor.
Thank
and
you.
I'm sorry I took over the ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've served as a MSEA board member, as commissioner, and later now as mayor. We changed the law with reference to MSEA to take it out of the exception provision so that it cannot be used as a conduit to get outside of the charter for purposes of referenda. And the reason why I support this is severalfold. The first is MSEA right now operates at a deficit. If you take into consideration the grant money that it's giving, it's a significant deficit. But the entity itself generates about $152,000 a year, and it's got $111,900 in operating expenses, exclusive of a subsidy from the general fund of an additional $64,000, which takes you up to about $171,900 in total expenses for an agency that's generating $150,000 in total expenses. I would defer to the city attorney with reference to your legitimate questions about what potential ongoing liability would exist for the city.
Yes, sir. To what I understand, there was DOT, they offer a grant, and that it was a financial assistance from DOT, and I think that it was in reference of the interlocal agreement until 2013. I want to know if we still are receiving that grant, and if not, and also as I do understand now, and correct me, Joe, if I'm wrong on this, MSEA was being funded by the bed tax, right? Part of the bed tax.
Sure.
Okay.
It was back
was.
then until.
But I want to know that since we gotten the funds, MSEA funds, they have been used for other sources, you see, and all those bed taxes, and because of the interlocal agreement, has been diverted.
Correct.
To a payment of
Stadium.
The stadium, for the payment of the stadium.
Right.
That's what it is.
Garages,
The garage and all of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And the second part is obviously based on some comments that were made here and some of the concerns expressed. We took this issue to the board. The board also voted unanimously to abolish MSEA. So, my recommendation as its chair, in defense of what the board has recommended, and also given the fact that it's operationally running at a deficit annually, is to abolish it. So, what my understanding of the consequences of it is we would save a significant amount of money in terms of operational savings, and we would not incur, and I'll let the city attorney speak to this, but we will not incur any additional liability or any additional legal responsibility that we would not otherwise have, given the fact that MSEA is a subdivision of the city, and we're essentially on the hook for anything that MSEA does in any regard.
That's absolutely true.
Excuse me. Let me. Since I was the only person here that was part of the board at the time we voted, the board voted unanimous to dismiss MSEA, but to keep the contract the same way they are.
Correct.
And during our meetings, we made certain changes and adjustment to those contracts, and we moved that those will be maintained the way they are right now. Now, I know a lot of allegations has been made here. They talked about DOT, a lot of things are going back and forth, and I think before we come back, this is the first reading, it's up to you if you want to approve it or not, but in the second reading, one of the things that the board requested is to make sure that all the contract, the legally bound by the new, whoever takes it over, that the same motions that we have made in the past be maintained. Any adjustment of the amendment that we have made to any of the contracts approved by MSEA's board will be maintained. And I know there's a lot of question about DOT, who owns the license and all that. That is something that needs to be approved. Also, I'd like to see the numbers, because
Yes.
I don't believe we're running with a deficit, but I'd like to see the numbers. Those numbers have been shown to me.
We want to. I agree. We want. Me personally, I want to clarify.
Yeah.
You see that, so there'll be no question. You see,
Mm-hmm.
are we running a deficit? Are we not running a deficit? The contracts are being. They're. I mean.
I can answer them, but I'll be happy to furnish you with that information.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On an operational basis, exclusive of grants, because when you throw grants in, it creates a different scenario. Exclusive of grants, technically, the organization is making $152,000, which is essentially $72,000 in rent payments from Chalks and $84,000 in rent payments from the Watson Island heliport lease. That's about $156,000 roughly. The operational expenses are $111,900, which is a slightly less than a deficit, but we're getting a $66,000 subsidy from the general fund, so that puts it at about $176 in total expenses, which brings it into a deficit position. What has been happening is we've been cannibalizing the reserves. MSEA has about $522,000 in reserves, and we've been giving grants from the reserve. So one way or another, MSEA will essentially run out of money at some point in the near future.
You were saying that MSEA had grants. Where were those grants coming from?
The grants are issued by the board.
Yep. From the reserves?
Correct.
Okay,
That's right.
So that's what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
We were getting it from somewhere
Correct.
else.
That's right.
We're not getting money, any other revenues than the rent from the heliport and shops, right? That's the only revenues that MSEA is getting is from only those two sources.
Well,
and we're getting $2 from the Miami Children's Art Museum.
And $2.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay. That makes a difference. Okay, that makes a difference.
was chairman of MESA, going back 16, 17 years, for about 6, 7 years, when MESA had real money. That's back when we had the old Miami Arena that's no longer there. We had the Miami Heat and Panthers that played there. But a lot has changed since then. Commissioner Gord was there through a lot more since I've been gone. I've been back for less than a year. And I will defer to whatever motion you see fit from your experience in the years you've been there, and we'll second it.
Commissioner Gordon?
My understanding is the whole full board saw the need to disband MESA, but at the same time, the board makes sure that the contracts were valid, the adjustment that has been made to the contracts will be maintained, and most important, who owns the airport, if it's the city, DOT, or whatever. We need to have that clarified before it comes to us in the second reading.
That's my point. I agree with you 100%.
My only question, which I think yours is heading that way, that I want to ask to the Assistant City Attorney this year. MESA was basically kept alive, whether we want to admit it or not, for the sole purpose of going around the Carollo Amendment. And my question is, if we're going to be dissolving MESA, and instead of finding another entity to deal with MESA, MESA's going right to the city, does that put us in conflict? I was told before, no, but I got to ask it again because I'm not convinced of that.
What I was told is if we have to renew our leases, then we're going to have to go to referendum and follow.
That's right. That's
for the moment they'll transfer smooth. Is that
right? I can answer that.
Thank you.
First thing, as the mayor indicated, the MESA code was changed so that that loophole no longer exists. So even if MESA were to survive, there is no way around Section 29 of the Charter. But these agreements were signed. There's 3 lease agreements, Commissioner. One for the Miami Children's Museum, one for Linden for the heliport, and one for Nautilus Chalks. The Miami Children's Museum is a 50-year lease. The Linden is a 30-year, as well as the Nautilus Chalks. So the Nautilus Chalks and Linden will expire in the year 2043. Those leases are valid and binding. This change will not have any effect on them. The only issue is, as has been discussed, is that the leases exist as they exist. If there is any attempt to modify or change those leases, they would be subject to Section 29 of the city charter.
But they would be subject, irrespective of whether MESA is abolished or not, because
Correct.
that cannot be used anymore as an instrumentality for circumventing 29.
Thank you for clarifying. Commissioner Gord, a question for you. If the original intention of this fund, the money generated, was to help with events and large-scale things that help Miami's image in the terms of sporting, would it be smart for us to earmark the reserves and remaining income toward that purpose in the future? We're always asked by major sporting events when they come to town, whether it's Super Bowl, Orange Bowl, F1, whatever, to contribute in some way. And it's tough for us to dig into the general fund when we've got that spoken for.
I would agree with that.
If we set this aside and we use it for that purpose, and it's the commission's decision on however it's spent, would that be a good idea?
You could put in a special revenue account.
The idea that was created and the grants that we allow was grants to give, for example, the what was that concert that was done in downtown Miami, the station, the radio station,
What year?
can't think of the word right now.
DNA?
No, the jazz. The jazz that took place, the jazz festival took place.
That's right.
There were a couple of events that we took place that we did it because there was sports facility, people that wanted to create sports. And I think that could be a good idea. I mean, that MESA was created to attract revenues, to attract sports, and we were able to bring the Miami Heat. That's one of the reasons Miami
Sports
Heat
and conventions. That's
convention. But we don't have a convention.
Mr. Chair, between first and second reading, we intend on adding some language to the ordinance. The first provision will say all the rights, duties, and obligations of MSEA shall be transferred to the city, including title to all the property and assets of MSEA. The second one will go to this concern. A new special revenue account titled Sports Facilities and Activities is established, and funds in an amount equal to all fund balances remaining in the accounts of MSEA are transferred to the city, and the city manager is authorized to accept and appropriate said funds in accordance with applicable local, state, and federal laws.
And revenues.
Right. The third one would be all indebtedness, duties, and obligations of MSEA are hereby assumed by the city. And fourth, the independent auditor general is directed to conduct an audit of the accounts and finances of MSEA upon its abolishment in accordance with Section 2-528 of the City Code. That way, the commission will have that.
Sir,
just a moment. Todd, I was the mover. Should I pass the gavel to Commissioner Gord just to keep things?
Okay. Commissioner Gord,
Yes,
may
you're
are
recognized.
we clear that we don't have to? Those contracts don't have that. They will not be subject to Section 29, the Carollo Amendment.
Yes.
Is that
I'll let him
clear?
answer. Yeah, I'll let him.
Give him a chance. Look, I promise the public, I'll give him a chance. Right now, we're discussing among the county
See.
commission. If you want to get involved in
I
that
just want to
discussion,
make
you're
clear.
welcome to do so. But it might be against you.
I think.
Well, look, we've been here all day too. He can wait and he can speak when I open it to the public. Okay? No. We're still discussing right now. A motion's not going to be taking place. If a motion takes place and a vote will take place, we'll hear from the public before we take a vote. Okay?
Okay.
Chairman Gord.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to keep order in the court. Here
Yes,
comes
sir.
the judge. Yes, I was asking the city attorney a question that I want to make perfectly clear because we had some instances that a decision or opinion from the city attorney, and then later on we being sued. You see, and I don't want to have any loophole or any reason for anybody to challenge those contracts.
Right.
Okay?
So what's going to happen is there's something called an attornment provision. An attornment provision means that essentially MSEA will step out and the city will step in. And those contracts that are currently existing, the 30-year contract for the two tenants as well as a 50-year contract for the Children's Museum will remain in full force and effect. Otherwise, we may subject ourselves to an impairment of contract if we tried to cancel those contracts. They have a valid living contract that will remain after this attornment provision.
But MSEA was the vehicle that bypassed the Carollo Amendment by being MSEA dismantled.
Right.
Then somebody, I'm just being devil's advocate. Right. By being MSEA being dismantled, then wouldn't it be possible for somebody to say those contracts are not legal because they did not? Is the city the one that is? Now is the owner of those contracts, and now now we have to go back again or go into some sort of RFP because now those contracts are not valid because they did not satisfy the Carollo Amendment.
Well,
will that be possible?
I don't think so, sir, because that's the point of an attornment provision. An attorment provision protects a tenant whenever you have a change of the landlord. So the attornment provision is in the contracts and it protects them. So any attempt to say that they could not step in the shoes would potentially lead to liability. But that's why we're saying that this will be relatively simple transition. It'll be just the city taking over for MSEA.
Okay. Really taking over.
Right. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Once again, the board, when they make the decision, they asked that we wanted to get all that information. There's a lot of people suing the MSEA right now. We have to get that information. At the same time, my understanding, a couple of people thinks the city of Miami is the airport license, and some other people says DOT no. So those questions have to be answered. So we'd like to get the answer for those questions for the second reading. You got to have all of that. Mr. Chairman, I did not open to the did not open to the public.
I understand it. We're looking at one of our tenants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have I'll give you the floor to express whatever desire it is that you want to express. However, he's not a lawyer, so always remember that. And I keep saying this because I know that. But hopefully we're not hearing anything about any lawsuits or anything like that.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
My lawyers are taking care of that. Okay. I'm talking about what you just discussed right now.
We just want to be sure that you have the same rights, etc.
Of
right?
course.
So go ahead and you can express yourself, sir.
Well, my name is Ignacio Vega Pinichet. I'm Chuck's president, and I completely agree with you that we need to know if it runs in a deficit or not. It's inconsistent that we run in a deficit. That, for example, or that this board adopt a resolution to abolish MSEA without even knowing or approving their financial statements for not ending on September 30, 2017, where there's a contribution of $200,000, which is 2 years of the expenditures of MSEA. And then we say that we're running at a deficit. I want to explain a little bit, just go a little bit. First of all, I would like to say that I left this hall last time happy and content because with just a few words that I said, you understood perfectly and you arrived to a resolution where this abolishment of MSEA was going to be postponed until these adjournments were completed prior to the abolishment and in a seamless manner and without interfering. The truth is that the city attorney has not straightened anything out. She has done anything. And not only that, she has not answered to our multiple calls and letters asking for a meeting to see how this was going to be done. I would have loved to say that we are in the same position as last time and just say let's adjourn it, but we're not. We're in a worse position, and I'll tell you why. I had a record request from the FAA, and I have received a letter from City Attorney George Wyson informing the FAA that they're taking over the airport in Watson Island. That the city is taking over the airport. I have the license. I have a license to operate the Miami Seaplane Base as a public use airport, granted by the FDOT, who is the one who has to issue that license. And having the city attorney said just 1 minute before I left that if all I wanted is to continue as I am, and I said yes, in short, as yes, I said yes, and suddenly I see that they're sending letters to the FAA saying that they're going to take over the airport. Okay, that's my first problem.
Could I just interject that is the subject of a lawsuit, and
no.
They've already sued us on that ground.
We were discussing this here. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about lawsuits. Okay. I'm just saying what we said here. And excuse me. So what we said here is that we were going to do that it was going to be adjourned or whatever, and suddenly this happens. Okay, I'm just saying that. That's my concern, commissioners. I'm not only concerned about the contracts and the signatures and all that stuff. I'm worried about what the city attorney and city staff do regardless of what the contracts agreements state. And I'm not the only one. I would like to share with you right now the complaint voiced by one of the most recent appointed board members at the MSEA meeting. At that meeting, Ms. Catherine Moore had the courage to defy the mayor, the city attorney, and all his assistants, the assistant city manager, all of whom probably outnumber the members of the MSEA board present at the meeting, to say that she accepted the appointment to the board that he believes that the city administration has lied to the MSEA board. Member Beloso further demands to know who authorized Aldo Bustamante, an employee of the city, to present an item to the city commission to approve a revised and amended interlocal agreement by and between the city and MSEA that MSEA had not even seen or approved. And that's my big concern. In any case, the resolution adopted by the board is true. They accept to abolish MSEA. They recommend to abolish MSEA. But they don't accept that these adjournments are done before, as we or you decided that you were going to do it here.
Besides, this authorization is given to the chair, which I don't know if that's legal, frankly, because when MSEA was incorporated, it says that all the execution of all contracts has to be done by the executive director. So the executive director is the only other choice, as I see, and that choice, we don't have it either. Why? Because there has been a executive summary investigation on MSEA questioning Lourdes Blanco's position, which she believes that it is how would you say? I'm sorry, I just lost myself. Just a minute. She believes as she's being retaliated because of this, just because she has brought to the attention of the boards, of the members of the board, of the city staff and everybody, certain deficiencies in the financial statements.
So she's already made her statement public?
No, she's been doing this for 2 years.
But what I'm saying is that she came earlier today, and she made a statement on the record. But my question to you is, because now we're about 6 minutes in now, is, so what are you saying? Are you against us abolishing MSEA, or
no? What I'm saying,
as long as your interests are protected.
No, what I'm saying, sir. I'm sorry. I will answer this. I don't have, as I said the first time I came here, I don't have anything against, in favor, or as long as it's good for the city, I'm fine. All I'm saying is that before we do that, we have to have a complete report of what MSEA has and what it doesn't have. And what I'm saying is that we need to know exactly what it is, because one of the things, and I'm sorry, I have to make reference to her, not because of what she said this morning, just because she's bringing up something that is a significant deficiency in the financials.
Yes.
And why is that? It's because, again, the same thing that Moore was saying, that the interlocal agreement, we don't have the interlocal agreement, which is the interlocal agreement that is being applied. Okay? I have the two of them here. If you apply this one, which is the one circulated in 2013, those monies that were distributed, 200,000, were properly done. If you use this one, they have been, this money deviated to private entity. And I'll tell you what, the only difference is 2 words. This one says, the authority shall pay or cause to be paid. Okay, that's the new one. This one says, the authority shall cause to be paid by the subtenant. So what I'm saying, sir, is that if we look at the situation right now, and you ask me, what is the situation, as you were asking, of the seaplane, okay? With this interlocal agreement, I would be paying $6,000 per month, and that's your money. The heliport would be paying $2,000, and that's their money. If you do this one, I would be paying $6,000. It will be going to a restricted account. The heliport will be paying $2,000. It will be going to a restricted account, and that same month, the heliport will be getting $8,000. So what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. Now, that's the whole thing. So it is very important because this affects my rights as well. In this contract, the one from 1997, by the way, and I don't see why, a contract between a city and a board would remove 3 words to say that have to be paid by subtenant. I mean, that would be something that I would remove from my contract, but not from this contract. So what I'm saying, sir, is that this contract was the one that was applicable before. It was the one that was applicable in our original contract, which was amended in 2014. This one contract says that there should be nothing here that could interfere or be a detriment to me in the future if it's amended. And in any case, that it needs my consent. That was what my former lease said. And I have never been asked for any consent to this. But, let me tell you, and the reason is, I'm saying this, is because of this contract, which is based on a 1992 study with the Miami Greater Bureau, I don't know what. And then that couldn't happen because it was not approved. Then there was a second chance in 2004 which was for Flagstone to move to relocate the heliport because of all that. Here, the resolution, by the way, that was done in 2002, addresses this sort of facility in 980 MacArthur Gosway, which is not the heliport, which is not mine address, it's not Saxon, it's Flagstone address. The report done by Kimberly Horton says that Flagstone is going to finance the aviation center, and that Linden is going to be a helicopter operator, not a heliport operator. So there has been a lot of things here, sir, that I think, and first of all, let me tell you, I think that this is something that is very difficult. It is very difficult to prove and to go through every little thing.
Yeah, I know it is, and that's the difficulty that the city commission is going to have to deal with. Because if you ask why things have been difficult on MSEA board, it's because of what you're seeing right now.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
sir, just give me a minute to finish.
20 seconds to finish.
Okay, no, just give me a minute, sir. This is a very important thing.
But the issue is this.
I'm going to stand side by side with this brave lady, the executive director, who did what she had to do. That's her job. That's why we hired her. I'm going to stand still and by the side of Miss Catherine Moore, who's asking, she doesn't get paid for what she does, and she's asking for contracts because she has, I don't care what kind of doubt she has. She has the right to get all the information she needs. And let me tell you, I'm going to stand with them. And I'm going to ask you, because we all have the same here, we have pledged allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. And this is a great city. But it's a great city because it belongs to the United States of America. Because we have the best Constitution in the world, and because we have the tools to make that Constitution move. And you, gentlemen, have that right or that power to make that system work. And I think that we're not asking something that I want for me. It's not something that we're asking for anybody else. We just want to be sure that what it has been done here is correct. When I do the litigations, sir, believe me that I don't like it. I'm going to tell you something else. My minimum investment when I acquired Chalks, and I came here, I went to the mayor and said, I want to take over Chalks. I went to the MSEA board and I said, I want to take over Chalks as long as my vision is not contrary to higher expectations that the city may have for this property. And they said no. They unanimously agreed. So I am here with all my right to say what I'm saying. And the other thing that I want to say is that
every time you transition to something else.
No, what, I'm sorry?
Every time you say this is it, you transition to something else.
You're right. And I
have you ever spoken?
And you know what? And you let me talk because you know that I have the right to talk, sir.
No, it's not that.
I know.
The public has a 2-minute comment period. You've spoken for 10 minutes. Because you're intimately involved. Hear me.
My word. 20 seconds.
You're intimately involved
20
in
seconds.
the situation.
No.
But there's some other people that are intimately involved as well.
I'll let him answer the question of the 200,000.
Now you said 20 seconds.
Okay, 20 seconds. My minimum investment is $2,100,000. I've already spent $7 million in expenses. I don't like litigation, gentlemen, because I could have 3 times my minimum investment constructed there with a restaurant open and having my money that I deserve and having the best seafood in the world. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this voice,
Mr. Chair.
But I know that you want to do the best for our city.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just address a couple points very quickly? We've had 2 MSEA meetings since I was mayor. One on May 31st and another one on September 25th, so that was factually inaccurate. By the way, I voted for his assignment, in favor of it, him receiving the assignment for the Chalks lease, and I also voted for the upzoning of the property to allow him to build what he's building there. So I'm not sure that I understand all of that, and I do agree that we do have the best constitution in the world. That part I agree with. Right now the current budget is running at and I don't know any other agency that does this, where it collects revenue and it spends 73% of its revenue in cost. Certainly the CRA does not do that. Okay, they spend at most 20% of the revenue that they collect. This is 73%. By the way, that's exclusive of a $60,000 general fund subsidy that if you included that in the budget, which I would highly recommend if you don't abolish MSEA, that you include it in the budget. and you have a true picture of what MISA costs the taxpayers, it would have an operational deficit of about $20,000 a year. That's exclusive of the grants that are cannibalizing the grants that are cannibalizing the reserves, that whatever's left. So I really think we should move on, and then we can provide the commissioners in second reading whatever information that they need so we can move forward.
Now, I didn't promise you an opportunity to speak.
But since my client's name was invoked on various occasions, I would greatly appreciate it. And I do promise, please put on the clock, that I will be much less than 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Manny Priegues, 4000 Malaga Avenue, Miami, Florida 33133, representing the heliport on Watson Island. You heard a lot in the last 10 minutes. And the ironic thing about that is that the only way that all of those issues get explored and get analyzed is by your city staff. Not by the MISA staff, because they only have one person, but by the city staff, by your professional city staff. So it's ironic that he should be asking for you not to move forward with this, given the fact that at the end of the day, the entity that's going to be responsible for rendering an opinion is the city government. So why have MISA? I mean, even MISA itself recognized this fact and voted the way they did unanimously. So that's the first thing that I want to put on the table. The second thing, very quickly, is you have the great luxury of having that gentleman over there be your city manager. 2 of the 3 facilities on Watson Island are aviation facilities. Mr. Manager, you were the director of one of the biggest airports in the United States of America for how many years? 5 years. If you can't trust that gentleman over there to run 2 aviation facilities on Watson Island, I don't know what to say. Thank you very much.
Did you put him up to this, Melu, or?
No, sir.
By the way, who was he representing? The plane, the helicopter, or the case?
He was represented immediately.
It's me.
Automobile.
Now, I'm going to hold you because you are an attorney. So
I'm not an attorney.
You're not
20 seconds, just because he's very impassioned and I'm not. Well, I am, but I just wanted to make very clear, just for the record. Marine Kim with Nautilus Enterprises at 1000 MacArthur Causeway. 4 weeks ago, when this commission instructed the city attorney to reach out to its subtenants to have agreements in place, I wanted to say that for the last 4 weeks, we have heard nothing. We sent an email last week, we sent a follow-up email, we left 3 or 4 voicemails. And this morning at 9:43, 43 minutes after the city commission convened, we were given a call back to let us know, oh, we're working on a one-pager, but we don't have it yet. So that does not give me comfort, and I would ask that this commission consider the deferment until at least Chalks has received some documentation from the city on how it expects to attorn, because we do not have an attornment clause, as George Weissong knows very well from the memo he prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't want to sell beyond the closing, but I just wanted to make the comment that none of that material will matter if this abolishment of MISA occurs. They have sued the city, they have sued MISA. This litigation will survive this. They will have the opportunity to defend themselves. Nothing will change by changing the relationship of who they deal with, either the city or MISA. So just wanted to make that clear.
They want an atonement.
Yes, in fact, I have said several times today that they will get an attornment. The interlocal agreement, Article 22 of the interlocal agreement between the city and MISA says that the subtenants will not be affected if the interlocal is terminated. The effect of abolishing MISA is the termination of the interlocal agreement. If they don't want to adjourn and lose their contract, then they can voluntarily give up their contract. It's actually in their best interest for the attornment provision to apply to them, and I don't understand why they're arguing against the attorment provision.
No, we're not, but we don't have an attornment clause, and therefore any modification of my lease requires that you cannot unilaterally amend the lease, which you, by the way, tried to do, and you notified the FAA as if we had accepted your unilateral agreement. So we're not saying we're not going to turn, we're not going to say we're not going to transfer, but you need to show us the paperwork. Everything is subject to paperwork. I'm not going to take it on the, oh, I promise I'm going to give you a document. I'm just asking, give me a paperwork, let's sign it, and then we can bring it back to this commission. We're not going to change our lease. We're saying, if you're going to allow us to return, and we consent to that return in exactly the same terms and conditions, once it's executed by your office, the City of Miami, and talks, then there's no issue. But you cannot unilaterally amend our lease, which you've already tried to do.
The adjournment agreement will be attached to the package for second reading.
Okay, sounds good.
Fair.
But they need it before second reading. So,
Fair.
all right, it's been properly moved, it's been seconded, it's been discussed ad nauseum. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion carries.